Welcome to another episode of the Wandering Watercolor. Let's paint. So this is the next page in the Majestic Horses watercolor coloring book. And as always, you have a porcelain plate where you mix your colors. A rag or a paper towel, something where you can dry off the brush, maybe pick up some of the excess water. Spare piece of paper and brush. Any brush works, doesn't really matter. Cup of water on the side. That's it. Any palette also works, and I will leave a description of all the different types of palettes that I've used and I've reviewed. I'll leave that in the description. So this one's pretty straightforward. Basically, the first thing we'll do is we'll grab some brown. And whatever palette you're using, if you don't have any brown, the easiest way to mix it is to kind of mix all the colors together, or the three primaries, yellow, red, and blue. But what you do is add more red, play more with the yellow and the red, and you'll get a nice brown color like this. So first thing is, we're going to add a layer more on the underbelly, and we're imagining that the light is coming from the top, because this is a horse that is out in the wild, and it's a sunny day. He's just in the meadows or just running through a valley. Okay, and then we're going to wet our brush and just kind of pull that edge, make it a little, when you add the water and the pigment on the edge, it dilutes it and it makes it spread, so the darker part of it, you're basically creating a gradient. And here we're just going to fill in like that. And then grab some yellow and add it on top. You want it to blend in. You want it to blend in with what we already laid down. I'm not as worried about the yellow because it's the lighter colors don't come through as much. I'm gonna rinse my brush, grab the brown again, just fill that in. This is going to be the first layer. You can always pick up some of the color. You rinse your brush, dry it off. I really like how that looks. This is good because it creates some variation and makes it look more playful, and it gives you a lot to build on top of. As always, keep in mind that it does not have to be perfect. We're just going to let this dry because it's still very wet. And the next thing we're doing is we're getting some green. Any green works. There's no one specific green that has to be. And so basically, we're going to just spread the green around like that. Kind of press into the paper a little bit. You want those marks to show. You want to create some of that expressive watercolor texture. Rinse your brush. You can even go up a little. You want it to look a little messy because when we add the detailed, darker layers on top, it'll create variability in the texture and how it looks. It just makes it more pleasant to look at. So we'll leave that. And then just like we did before, we're going to mix some blue with some brown so that we can go ahead and get kind of like a more organic looking dark tone for the mane and the tail. And it's at your discretion whether you want the color to be more towards the blue or the brown. You can kind of play around with that. This is kind of like a decent gray undertone that I'll use, and we're literally just filling in, for example, where the tail is. Just fill it in right, just like that. And as you can see, I'm not trying to make it perfect. Same for the mane. I am going to go a little slower right here, just to try not to get it into the part that's yellow, just because it'll stand out a lot, just because yellow is such a light color. Okay. And we're just adding all of that. There we go. And same color, we're just going to add it in for the hooves. Okay. Coming along pretty quickly. Now, most of the body is pretty much dry, and what we can go ahead and do is just grab some straight brown or mix up some more brown. If you want to, you can add a little more red or a little more purple, kind of increase the intensity of the color. But I'm just going to keep it as it is. I'm just going to build up on top of the same color. And I'll go ahead and I'll add the shading. So we're going to put that here. Definitely more on the leg that's further away from us. Go like that. Same here. And also more on the front leg that's further away from us, just to kind of help differentiate the two. And maybe a little bit on this one on the bottom, like that. Okay, then I'm going to rinse my brush completely, dry it off a little bit, and then kind of muddle the edges, just so that they're not as harsh, so that there's a little more blending in the tones. Definitely add a little bit here in the face, like that. Same thing. Gonna dilute that a little bit. Okay. And that's looking pretty good. Now we can go back here where the grass is that the horse is standing on. We can get a lot more concentrated colors. Very little water, more pigment. And we're doing that for two reasons. One is I want it to look like there's a shadow there. And two, we can go ahead and kind of like accentuate some of the texture. Some just quick upward brush strokes to show that there's blades of grass coming through. Like that. Just like that. And feel free to be a little more sporadic with it. It does not have to be perfect. You can tell as you're doing it and the paint is coming off of the brush that some of the marks are getting lighter, and you can use that to your advantage to add variability, especially as you go further away from where the intensity of the color is. And then you can always just blend some of it. And rinse your brush. And then the next thing, we're just going to get some blue. And we're going to add more water to it because we don't want it to be very dark. We want it to be more transparent, since we're just going to add it in the background. And the way we'll do that is we'll go ahead and we'll add that all around and just kind of pull away the paint as you're laying it down. Pull it away from the actual object, like that. And then rinse your brush, dry it off, and then kind of do the same for the edges and leave some of that brush texture, those brush strokes that make it look so expressive. You can grab some more color, do that down here. See, I messed up a little bit and I got it in the yellow. That's okay. What we'll do is, while it's still wet, I'm just going to rinse off my brush completely, dry it off a little bit, and try to pick some of that up. That happens every now and then. And just repeat that a couple of times. And you can see you can kind of pick up that color, so it's not as bad. The next step, we're just going to get a little of the dark blue, add it to the color that we used to mix for the mane. We are going to get a little bit of red. You can see that immediately turns it much darker, especially if we get a little bit of teal or green. You can see how much darker that gets. So now we can add, using just the tip of the brush to get some nice thin strokes, we're going to add that so that we can show where the texture is of the hair and also create some shadow. It does not have to be perfect. And do that up here as well. Just take your time. Just make it look like there's, clumps of hair, the texture of the hair. Maybe a little bit up here. Definitely the nostril, you want to keep that dark. And then where the hoofs are, kind of add some in the center. Like that. We are pretty much done with this one. What you can do if you want to, as a final step, is you can mix a darker brown. You can go ahead and mix a darker brown that you can use as an outline or just to emphasize some of the darker spots. Like, for example, if I go ahead and if I just kind of add an outline down here, it just helps create more definition. And it also actually helps bring up the highlights. Because we're keeping this part kind of like where the darkest part would be. I'm going to go ahead and do that here as well. Back here a little more. Maybe up here a little bit. We're rinse off our brush. I'm going to step back for a moment just to kind of take a look at the painting. I'm pretty happy with how it looks. Stepping back always gives you kind of like better idea of how the overall image looks. Now, if you want to at any time, you can always just grab a black pen to add some detailed outlines. I usually do this part last because I don't want it to smear as I'm painting over it, unless you're using a waterproof pen. Or you can add pencil outlines if you want a lighter outline. Either or works perfectly fine, but I'm really happy with how this looks as it is. So we'll just keep it like that. Okay, so that was it for that one. As always, if you have questions, just shoot me an email, leave me a message, whatever works. Again, I'll keep everything, all the tools I used will be in the description, and I will see you on the next one.